Sir Keir Starmer, once a human rights lawyer, now leads the Labour Party. His measured forensic approach stands in stark contrast to the bombast of Boris Johnson. This difference is never more apparent than during Prime Minister's questions. This weekly parliamentary showdown is a crucible of British politics. It's where the leader of the opposition gets to directly challenge the Prime Minister. The stakes are always high. But recently the temperature has been rising. Starmer, with his background in legal scrutiny, has shown a knack for exposing inconsistencies and potential falsehoods. This has put the government on the defensive and raised questions about honesty and transparency at the heart of power. Starmer's recent accusations against the Prime Minister over the foreign influence registration scheme are a case in point. This scheme, designed to monitor and expose foreign interference in British politics, has become a political football. Starmer argues that the government has been slow to implement it and has failed to take the threat of foreign meddling seriously. The Prime Minister, in turn, accuses Starmer of playing politics with national security. The truth, as is often the case, is likely somewhere in between. The Foreign Influence Registration Scheme is the UK government's answer to growing concerns about covert attempts to influence its political system. The scheme, launched amidst much fanfare, aims to shine a light on the often murky world of lobbying and political donations. It requires individuals and organisations acting on behalf of foreign governments or political entities to register their activities. This includes disclosing their clients, funding sources, and the nature of their work. The goal is to make it harder for foreign actors to exert undue influence on British democracy. The scheme was introduced in response to growing anxieties about foreign interference, particularly from Russia and China. The UK, like many other democracies, has witnessed increasingly brazen attempts to manipulate elections, spread disinformation, and sow discord. The poisoning of Sergei Skripal on British soil in 2018, widely attributed to Russia, served as a stark reminder of the threat posed by hostile foreign actors. The FIRS, in theory, is supposed to provide the government with the tools to identify and counter such threats. However, its implementation has been far from smooth. From the outset, the FIRS has faced a barrage of criticism from opposition politicians, intelligence experts, and civil society groups. One of the main criticisms is that the scheme is too narrow in its scope. Critics argue that it focuses too heavily on direct lobbying efforts by foreign governments and doesn't adequately address more subtle forms of influence. This includes things like disinformation campaigns on social media, funding of academic institutions, and the cultivation of relationships with influential individuals. Another major concern is the lack of enforcement mechanisms. The government has been accused of dragging its feet on setting up a dedicated unit to investigate potential breaches of the scheme. Without proper oversight and the threat of meaningful penalties, critics argue, the FIRS is little more than a paper tiger. This lack of teeth undermines the scheme's credibility and raises questions about the government's commitment to tackling foreign interference. Section 4. Public backlash and online outrage. The controversy surrounding the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme has not been confined to the halls of Westminster. The issue has sparked public anger and fueled a wave of online outrage. Social media platforms have been flooded with posts accusing the government of hypocrisy and incompetence. Many users have expressed frustration that the government seems more interested in protecting its own interests than safeguarding the integrity of British democracy. The hashtag #ToryCorruption has been trending on Twitter, reflecting a broader sense of disillusionment with the government's handling of this and other scandals. The public backlash underscores the importance of trust and transparency in government. When citizens feel like the system is rigged against them or that their leaders are not being straight with them, it breeds cynicism and undermines faith in democratic institutions. Section 5. Asylum seekers caught in the crossfire. The debate over the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme has also become entangled with the highly charged issue of immigration. The government has faced criticism from both sides of the political spectrum for its handling of asylum seekers. Right-wing commentators and politicians have accused the government of being too soft on immigration, while left-leaning groups have denounced the government's treatment of asylum seekers as inhumane. The government's decision to house asylum seekers in overcrowded processing centres and on barges moored off the coast has drawn widespread condemnation. Critics argue that these conditions are inhumane, and violate the UK's international obligations. The government in turn argues that it is facing an unprecedented surge in asylum applications and is doing its best to manage a difficult situation. Section 6. The erosion of trust, truth and transparency in peril. The controversy surrounding the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme is about more than just foreign interference. It goes to the heart of the relationship between the government and the governed. At its core, it is about trust, transparency and accountability. When citizens lose faith in their leaders' willingness to be honest with them, it erodes the very foundations of democracy. In an era of fake news, disinformation and political polarization, it is more important than ever for governments to be open and accountable to their citizens. This means being honest about the challenges they face, transparent about their decision-making processes and willing to admit when they have made mistakes. It also means creating a culture of accountability where those in power are held responsible for their actions. Failure to do so risks further undermining public trust and fueling the flames of cynicism and disengagement.